Well, hello, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your weekly Neo-TA wrap. We take a look at these markets. We do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves just one question, and that is, what happened last week? What does it tell us about the coming ones? I do the show every Sunday evening, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. If you haven't subscribed, reach up on the right-hand top side. Subscribe, and each time content is pushed, you'll get notification. As far as what did happen in the markets, last week it was a flat week. If you look at Friday's numbers, a little bit of a gain on the indexes here in the U.S. Elsewhere, a little bit of a pullback taking place. Dollar was a little bit stronger, gave up some of its gains, and pretty for the most part, that strong dollar is continuing to beat up on commodities in general. Russell was up 2% last week. Everything else was pretty much flat, and that pretty much sums up what took place. If there's one common theme to what's happening nowadays, what it is that day in, day out, it's bad news, right? We keep getting a slew of bad news why this market can't go higher, or it's going to crash, or whatever the story is. But I just want to focus here on what's been happening, and that is that this market continues to try and rise. No matter what the issue, no matter what people say, the market keeps trying to go higher and higher and higher. Independent of all the geopolitical issues, of the debt issues, of all those things. That's true on this daily time frame. It's true here on the weekly time frame. And it's certainly true on the monthly time frame. So if you look at the market and you ask yourself, is it time to back off this and do something different? You got to remind yourself that this market wants to go higher, not lower. And no matter what you think about it, the only time frame that's not bullish is this weekly. And this weekly is about to try and go that way itself. And so don't believe everything you hear. Believe what you see. And what you see is a market that simply doesn't want to give it up. Yeah, it's got its struggles. Yeah, it's got its problems. But over and over again, the bulls keep coming through, and they keep driving this market higher. If you look at it on a weekly, you had a takeaway bar last week, or at least the prior week. And this past week, holiday shortened week, just got a doji hanging there right at the highs on the S&P 500. If you look elsewhere, if you pull over, for example, to the NASDAQ, look at it on a weekly, this thing's getting ready to try to push over this high from about 3 weeks ago and go after the swing point high at the top. It's already gotten over the breakdown bars, saying it wants to try and move higher. If I move it over and look at it on an NDX, on the more concentrated NDX, that one already made new highs and it's going to go after them again. And then finally, if we move down the chain to the Russell breaks over on a swing point high on the daily chart, and Russell's trying to get back up to the breakdown bar on the weekly chart. All the indexes continue to tell us the same thing, and that is that there's strength in these indexes coming off those bottoms in August and September when you had a 12, 13, 14% drop, coming all the way back up to try to test the highs. The laggards, the Russell's still bringing up the tail, but the Russell itself, is performing pretty well when you consider all things. So when we come back, we'll take a look at the overseas markets and the AUX markets, because that's where the action probably is going to be this week. We'll be right back.
Learn how to trade with the Trade with LA service provided to you by TA Today. This service includes daily portfolio and comments that are emailed to you before the market opens each morning. We provide a daily view of the markets and a model portfolio you can follow even if you work another job. Every weekend, LA records his weekend broadcasts that gives you a synopsis of the week and a prognosis of coming weeks. You will also have access to our Teach and Trade room, where LA provides day trades and teaches neoclassical concepts throughout the trading day. To get started, go to our homepage and click Trade with LA.
So as we come back here, the big event this week and over the next 3 weeks actually is central banks. You have 6 of them reporting, giving us their thoughts, making their moves. One of them being the Fed, that's 3 weeks in. Bank of Japan is the day after that. And you got the ECB, which is the most important one right off the bat this week, come Thursday. And if you look at the dollar's had a couple bad candles, but it keeps grinding higher and has been grinding higher for some period of time. If you look at this on a weekly basis, so if I pop this over and get the weekly, you can see that you've got this big range trade that's been in effect. It's from here to there, the top. You've got a dividing line about in this area here, and then you've got, the tops and the bottoms. You're about halfway up now on a weekly, still grinding higher, right, going after this swing point high up here at the top. That's the big picture. If you come back to that micro picture and you look at the daily chart again, right, it's trying to run out of steam here. But if you look at the weekly, yeah, I could see this thing trying to spike a little bit higher. How far can it go? Well, to see that, you almost need to go back over and look at the European currency. Here's the European currency. Let's bring it to the weekly, though. And on the weekly, you can see it pushing down into this low from earlier this year, in March of this year. And that area down there is about 1% lower. You've got breaks on the swing point lows here and up higher. This one here. And that little overlap area there would be where you'd expect this thing to try to bounce to on a pushback up. So can we get a further sell-off? Yeah. How far? Probably a spike of this low, right? And then some sort of a pullback, bounce back up into this area potentially, and then potentially the continuation of the move to the downside. So you could kind of envision something like this trying to take place. That's on the euro. Yen, different story, but the euro is 50% of the dollar index. So if the euro starts to move in this manner, you're going to see the dollar bounce. That's going to help commodities, going to help the emerging markets. You're going to see the pressure that's on those start to lift. And if you look at those, you can see there's extreme pressure on each of those. Let me pull up the continuous commodity index. You can see that one here. On each time frame, one after another, right? This thing just keeps working lower and lower. Here's your daily. You got a little stick save here on Friday. But if you look at the weekly, right, this thing just continues lower. And if you look at it on the monthly, same thing, continuation. The dollar index is having a huge effect on commodities. This is all deflationary, and this is part of the pressure that we see on a regular basis. If you look at the emerging markets, the easiest way to look at those is the EEM. And what do you have there? It's the same story. These markets can't lift. You've got an ABCD type structure trying to take place again. I don't know that it's going to, but it's trying to. If you look at it on the weekly, there's no relief to this, right? You got a bounce. You didn't even get to the swing point lows up here on that bounce. Trying to work lower one more time. You can look at this however you want. All right, you can look at it as a large ABCD structure to the downside type, or you could look at it as, a little small ABCD structure trying to work higher back into these swing point lows. I tend to think it's probably more of this, and I tend to think that the only way it's going to be more of that is the dollar to pull back. That would happen on the ECB meeting probably Thursday, maybe a spike on the dollar into Thursday's meeting or on Thursday's meeting, and then the pullback where the euro starts to rise, takes some of the pressure off of this emerging markets and off of commodities. So bigger picture, that's what those look like, and that's probably, if you're looking for counter trend trades, that's probably not a bad place to be thinking in the upcoming week. Now, before the short break, I talked about overseas markets. You can see here Brazil, again, commodity market, having a tough time. If I look at Toronto, it's the same thing, right? It's having a tough time. All these time frames, all it did was a retrace back into a bearish retest regen. In other words, if I pull this up here like this, right, you retrace into it and then you try to regenerate to the downside. If you look in Asia, it's the same thing. If I look at, say, Shanghai had a big push down on Friday. More of government meddling there with the brokers. We'll have to see how they trade tonight. But, all across Asia, you've got weakness, whether you're looking there. I mean, the only place you don't have it is in the topics in Japan. Even Hong Kong still feeling the weakness across the region. Whether you're looking daily or you're looking monthly, all they did was bounce up into their bearish retest regens, and then they turned around and trying to regenerate lower. And you can see that test right there, and now the attempt to regenerate lower. How's this going to break? How's this going to lift? The way it's going to lift, folks, is it's going to be the dollar trying to pull back and putting some support into these. If you look over in Europe, Europe could actually see the euro get stronger now and not kill these markets because they've had their run and they're primed now to be able to withstand some sort of pressure. DAX breaks out. If you look at the DAX, it's over the breakdown bar. If you move over and look at the CACs, not as strong. Of course, you have the current situation with ISIS a couple of weeks ago that put some pressure on this market, but it's hanging here at the highs. If you look at it the weekly, it's also dealing with that breakdown bar. So Europe, yeah, they could take a little pressure. Asia, yeah, they could use a boost. How does that work? Euro gets stronger. How does that take place? Draghi has probably overpromised and probably will just deliver at best, or maybe under-deliver. That could put some juice back into the euro. So that's a look at the wrap on a weekly basis. I expect U.S. markets in either of those cases is probably going to do okay and going to try to grind higher. I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Thanks for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm L.A. This is and was your weekly NEOTA wrap. Have a great night. I'll see you next time. Good night.